April 16, 1983, 2 a.m. A woman leaves a bar in Carpentersville, Illinois. She walks to her car. She starts the engine. And then, nothing. For 42 years, Karen Schepers remained missing. Her family waited. The case went cold. And the Fox River kept its secret. Then 2 detectives did something no one expected. They made a podcast. And 2 months later, divers found her car with Karen still inside. This isn't a story about justice. Not really. There's no killer. No trial. No one to blame. Just a woman, a river, and 42 years of silence. And one detail that changes everything. When they pulled her car from the river, the emergency brake was locked. She wasn't asleep at the wheel. She wasn't unconscious. In those final seconds, Karen Schepers was fighting to stop. Karen was 23 years old. Blonde hair, blue eyes, 5'3". She worked at a manufacturing plant in Elgin and still lived with her parents. The night of April 15th, she went out with coworkers. A few drinks at a bar in Carpentersville. Nothing unusual. Nothing out of the ordinary. She left the bar around 2 a.m. Alone. Her car, a blue sedan, was parked in the lot. She got in and drove away. That's the last anyone saw her. Karen Schepers vanished in the early morning hours of April 16, 1983. She was driving home from a bar in Carpentersville. She never arrived. Her parents reported her missing the next day. Police searched. Neighbors searched. Divers even checked parts of the Fox River. They found nothing. The case went cold, not because police stopped caring. Detective files show periodic reviews over 4 decades. But every lead ended nowhere. Theories circulated. Maybe she ran away. Maybe foul play. Maybe an accident on a dark road. But without a body, without a car, there was nothing to prove. Years passed. Karen's parents grew old waiting for answers. Her siblings raised families. The world moved on. The river flowed. And somewhere beneath its surface, a secret waited. In January 2025, 2 Elgin police detectives decided to try something unconventional. Andrew Houghton and Matt Vartanian were working the cold case unit. They'd reviewed the Schepers file dozens of times. Same evidence, same dead ends, same unanswered questions that had frustrated investigators for 4 decades. But they had an idea. True crime podcasts were everywhere. People listened. Sometimes they remembered things. Sometimes they talked. What if they made their own? On January 20th, 2025, they launched Somebody Knows Something. The first episode focused entirely on Karen Schepers. They laid out everything, every fact, every theory, every dead end. The podcast gained traction. Local news picked it up. People in Elgin started talking about a case many had forgotten. Tips started coming in. Among the listeners was a volunteer dive team called Chaos Divers. They specialized in something unusual, searching bodies of water for missing persons and vehicles. They'd done this before, finding cars in rivers and lakes that had been missed for years, sometimes decades. They reached out to the detectives with an offer. We'll search. The original search had focused on one stretch of the Fox River, near where Karen might have driven if she took a wrong turn. But Chaos Divers looked elsewhere. They knew something about rivers that changes everything. Water moves, currents shift. A car that enters at one point can end up a mile downstream, or more. On March 24th, 2025, just 2 months after the podcast launched, Chaos Divers found something. Their sonar had a shape at the bottom of the river. A car. Upside down. The car was found more than a mile from where investigators had searched for 42 years. It had drifted downstream, settled into the silt, and disappeared from human knowledge. The next day, March 25th, they recovered the vehicle. Karen's remains were inside, 42 years in the river. And finally, she was coming home. Inside the car, they found her sapphire birthstone ring and her class of 1977 high school graduation tassel. Personal effects that confirmed what everyone already knew. But one detail stood out to investigators. The emergency brake. It was locked, pulled up as far as it would go. In the final moments, Karen had tried to stop the car. Think about that. She wasn't unconscious. She wasn't asleep. In the darkness, on a road she thought she knew, something went wrong. And she knew it. The emergency brake wasn't enough. The car went in anyway. The river took her. And for 42 years, no one knew where she was. When the news broke, Karen's family gathered at the recovery site. Fox News reported that the discovery drew an audible gasp from family members who had waited 4 decades for answers. Closure is a strange word. It doesn't mean the pain goes away. It means the waiting ends. After 42 years of not knowing, Karen's family finally had answers. Not all the answers they wanted. The physical evidence was degraded after 4 decades underwater. Some questions will never be resolved, but they know where she is now. What happened that night in 1983? The most likely answer is the simplest. Dark road, wrong turn. A moment of confusion at 2 a.m. and a river that came out of nowhere. But we'll never know for certain. And maybe that's okay. Sometimes the mystery isn't the point. Sometimes finding someone is enough. The Somebody Knows Something podcast continues. Detectives Houghton and Vartanian are investigating other cold cases now. Karen was the first success. She won't be the last. If you have information about a cold case, consider reaching out to investigators. Even small details that seem unimportant might be the piece that completes a puzzle decades old. Volunteer dive teams like Chaos Divers accept tips about potential vehicle locations in bodies of water. They've found what official searches missed, sometimes by looking in unexpected places. The National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, NAMOS, allows families to submit cases and compare against unidentified remains. It's a resource that didn't exist when Karen disappeared. If you're interested in cases like Karen's, you might want to subscribe to true crime podcasts that work with law enforcement. Sometimes listening is the first step toward helping. And if this story resonated with you, if you want to hear more cases like this, hit subscribe. We cover stories that slip through the cracks every week while the rest of the world sleeps. 42 years is a long time, longer than Karen Schepers was alive. In those years, the world changed completely, but her family never stopped wondering. Now they have an answer, not the one they hoped for, but an answer nonetheless. Karen Schepers is no longer missing. She's home. The Elgin Police Department has stated the case is now closed. Karen's death appears to be a tragic accident, a wrong turn on a dark night that ended at the bottom of the Fox River. But the podcast proved something important. Cold cases don't have to stay cold. New tools, new approaches, new eyes. Sometimes that's all it takes to find what was lost. Karen Schepers was 23 years old when she disappeared. She had blonde hair, blue eyes, a sapphire birthstone ring, and the high school tassel she never threw away. She left a bar at 2 a.m. on April 16, 1983. She started her car. She drove toward home. And somewhere on that dark road, she took a wrong turn that lasted 42 years. The river gave her back, eventually, and now, she can finally rest. This is Night Shift Stories, and sometimes the stories find their endings. Before we go, there's something that stays with me about this case. It's not the river. It's not the 42 years. It's the emergency brake. In those final seconds, as the car left the road and headed for the water, Karen Schepers pulled that brake as hard as she could. She was fighting. She didn't give up. It wasn't enough. The physics were against her. The river was coming regardless, but she tried. That's what stays with me. In the last moment of her life, she tried. And 42 years later, 2 detectives tried something new. A volunteer dive team looked where no one had looked before. And a family finally got to stop waiting. The emergency brake was locked. Karen Schepers didn't go quietly. And 42 years later, neither did her story. Good night. And be careful on those dark roads. Somewhere out there, someone knows something about a case that's gone cold. about a person who's been missing too long. And maybe tonight, they'll decide to speak. Karen's family waited 42 years for that call. For someone who remembered something. For anyone who could help them find her. In the end, it wasn't a tip. It wasn't a witness finally coming forward. It was technology, determination, and two detectives willing to try something that had never been done before. A podcast. Who would have thought? In 1983, when Karen disappeared, podcasts didn't exist. The internet didn't exist. The tools that would eventually find her hadn't been invented yet. She waited for us. At the bottom of the river, in the dark and the cold, while the world invented the tools that would bring her home. April 16th, 1983, 2 a.m. A woman leaves a bar in Carpentersville, Illinois. She walks to her car. She starts the engine. March 24th, 2025, mid-afternoon. Divers find her car at the bottom of the Fox River. The emergency brake is locked. Between those two moments, 42 years, an entire lifetime, lost to the river, but not forgotten, never forgotten. This has been Night Shift Stories. Until next time, keep the light on. The night Karen disappeared, the temperature dropped to 34 degrees, just above freezing. The Fox River was cold, dark, unforgiving. The last thing she saw through that windshield. We'll never know. The headlights catching water where road should be. The darkness rushing up. The cold coming in. She pulled the emergency brake. With everything she had. And then the river took her away from everyone who loved her. 42 years later, she came back. Different than before. But home. Finally home. The podcast that found her is still running. New cases. New mysteries. New families waiting for answers. Because somebody always knows something. And sometimes, if you're willing to try something new. If you look where no one's looked before, you find what's been lost. Karen Schepers, 1959 to 1983. Found in 2025. 42 years in the river. Remembered forever.